You know, we talked about the S&P 500 breaking down. We talked about that on the podcast here in the video cast. The fact that the domestic equity markets are the weakest. The international markets are continuing to be pretty strong. You know, you look at the S&P 500, like I said, breaking a spread triple bottom today, moving to new lows. S&P equal weight's right on the verge of doing so. It completed a bearish triangle today. But yeah, if you look at the international ETFs, 3/4 of those are still above their January lows. And most notably, China had another big breakdown, I think, last week, and that's moved below its January lows. But by and large, you're seeing still that positive divergence there on the international side. Now, that being said, bonds, fixed cash are still favored over international equities too, but international equities are still favored over domestic equities. So when the equities market gets back on solid footing here, international is still going to be a place you're going to want to look.
Yeah, worth mentioning that China, that has been a serious turn in what we've seen in all of the Chinese ETFs that we follow, and some of the indexes where we also follow actual stocks trading on the Hong Kong Exchange on a database as well. And you look at that, you see a lot of problems there. FXI is probably the ETF you might be most familiar with. It was the first ETF that covered the China space, and that violated its trend, completed a bearish catapult, hit a low, violated a key level of support. The fund score is now well below 3, and we've seen in that matrix, it's in the world matrix, it's also in the matrix that's just the iShares country components, and it has fallen down to I think 26 or 27 spots out of about 30-some countries, so well below the midway mark, and really as low as we've seen it since it's been in that high area. So really a pretty impressive turnaround to the negative side, and that's one way you can definitely add value, because that's one of the places where I think investors that are just sort of getting used to investing internationally, China's sort of the place you read about, the place you hear about, the books you pick up.
The interesting part about that is a decoupling from the economy versus the stock market. The economy, certainly China has the fastest growing economy out there, but it's also got the highest expectations for the stock market. When you've got those high expectations for the stock market and they just don't quite make it, they will kill you. But you take, on the other hand, why has Mexico done so well? Whoever expected Mexico to do anything?
Right.
Brazil, it wasn't that long ago, they had 5,000% inflation. Whoever expected Brazil to do anything? So the lowest expectation type of places is probably where you want to be, that have plenty of growth left.
Yeah. Another one that a big turnaround too is South Korea. That had been doing very well, turned around on a relative strength basis months ago, and that's been one of the ones that's moved to a new low, violated its January levels, and just continued to sell off there as well. So important to watch those matrix and make sure you only buy things that are whatever you put in a matrix, which is an arm wrestling contest amongst members, that the only things you're invested in are things that are at least in the top half. If they can't outperform at least half of the other members out there, then you need to move it to the sidelines. And
if you don't want to do the legwork, the iShares International Manager will do it for you. It'll watch the matrix and the relative strength for you. So, if something falls out, you just click a button once a week on the ETF tab, and it'll tell you if there's any changes in that model. It's another way that you can.
That's the real play, is look at the models.
Look at the models there.
Well, did you hear about Father Murphy?
No.
Father Murphy was in a small town just outside of County Cork, and he was looking out the rectory window, and he saw Jesus Christ himself walking down the street. So he went to the phone quickly. He dialed the Vatican in Rome, and he said, Your Excellency, he said, I'm looking out my rectory window right now. He said, I see Jesus Christ himself walking down the street toward the rectory. He says, what shall I do? He said, at least act busy. And so from Ireland today, happy St. Patrick's Day to you. We'll talk to you next week.